I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away, and we're not going to see it again, hopefully, after a period of time. I think great progress is being made by Johnson & Johnson, by Oxford, and some others. NYU, I see, is very advanced. But if you don't get it, this is going to go away at some point.
President Trump bucking the conventional wisdom on Friday. Most experts agree that we can't get fully back to business without a more effective treatments and a vaccine. And we're joined now by two top executives working on that. The Chief Science Officer for Johnson & Johnson, Dr. Paul Stoffels, and Dr. George Yancopoulos, the co-founder, president, and Chief Science Officer of Regeneron. Thank you both for joining us this morning. And Dr. Stoffels, let me begin with you. Will this pass without a vaccine, and where do things stand with what you're working on right now?
Well, we all hope it will pass without a vaccine, because that would be great if the disease goes away very quickly. But we don't think so. It's now spreading around the world so fast and so significant that we need a vaccine to control it. Where are we? We are preparing clinical trials. We are fully in upscaling, and we start clinical trials in September, and hopefully have data by the end of the year, as well as now working towards 1 billion vaccines for next year. So we are upscaling manufacturing, and we start producing later in the year with the aim to deliver 1 billion vaccines next year.
So that's all next year. Is there any possibility that the hope that the president had called for earlier in the week, that there could actually be some kind of an effective vaccine in 2020, is that realistic at all?
Well, clinical trials will need to be done to show that is effective, and that will take some time. We will have some vaccine available this year, but it will depend on the authorities, the FDA and others, to decide whether it can be used earlier before clear efficacy data are available.
Dr. Yancopoulos, you're working at Regeneron on an antibody cocktail to both treat and prevent COVID. Where do things stand with that combination right now?
Well, we're on track to go into clinical trials in about a month, in June. And if all goes well, it's possible that within a month or two after that, that we would actually have data that our antibody cocktail could be an important stopgap until we get an effective and safe vaccine, that it could actually prevent disease in people who are not yet infected, and even treat people who are actually at early or even the late stages of the disease. And it might be possible that if all goes well, hundreds of thousands of doses of this could be available by the end of the summer.
Can you explain a little bit about how that works? How can you prevent something that's not a vaccine actually prevent the transmission or prevent it from taking hold?
What a vaccine does, as we all know, is it generates immunity in the person who gets the vaccine. What is that immunity? Those are antibodies against the virus that bind and kill the virus. What we've developed is technologies that allow us to make exactly these antibodies that the body makes in response to the vaccine. We make them outside of the body, we scale them up in bioreactors, and then we inject them into people. And immediately it's as if they've been vaccinated. It's called a passive vaccine because it doesn't depend on the body having to make the response itself. So it can actually work much faster than a regular vaccine. And it can also work in settings of treatments where you're already infected, where vaccines are not effective. Of course, vaccines can provide permanent immunity to much larger numbers of people. This is why we need all of these efforts. We need the sort of efforts that J&J and others are doing, and we need the sort of efforts that we're doing that can provide these immediate sources of both prevention and treatment that can have an impact until we get the vaccine.
And Dr. Stoffels, as you all are working on this vaccine, how do you also solve, assuming you come up with something that is effective, something that is safe, how do you solve the problem of getting it out on a large scale around the world at an affordable price?
Well, we have a very effective manufacturing procedure where we can produce up to 300 million out of a 2,000-liter vessel. And so we are now multiplying those manufacturing sites we will have 4 or 5 available in the course of the year where we can start producing from. And that will give more than 1 billion vaccines in the course of next year. It's the science technology which we have, the platform, which allows to go that fast, and in those quantities. What's also important is that the vaccine is stable, that you can transport it around the world at 2 to 8 Celsius in order to make sure everybody can get access. From north to south, east to west, the entire world probably will need a vaccine, and that's what we are working on.
Dr. Yancopoulos, we only have a little bit of time left, but how do you assure, as we're trying to rush this all to market, that it's done in the safest manner possible?
I think the most important thing that you already heard from Dr. Stoffels is that we have a strong and powerful set of technologies throughout the ecosystem in basic research and in industry that allows us to fight these battles when they appear. And so we have to be ready, and we have to make enormous investments as a society, both in the NIH, we have to up our game there, but also to support, to have such a robust set of industries and companies that can come forward and try to fight this epidemic when it occurs. And being ready means making those sorts of investments beforehand.